On behalf of everybody here at Hanover Presbyterian Church, welcome. It's a retro today, back to a time before there was air conditioning, and I know it's hot, so we're going to do what we can to keep you comfortable. Some suggestions: we have the hand fans for those who feel like they need them. If you need to, maybe you can move more into the area or the path of one of the floor fans. For people who are starting to feel ill or faint, we have the church office open and the air conditioning is on in there. So please avail yourselves of that. We don't want anybody to get sick. We've got iced beverages back there. And if there's something else you can think of that we can do to make you a little bit cooler today, please let one of us know. There is a wheelchair accessible, a unisex bathroom right through here, and there's a men's room halfway down this staircase and a women's room halfway down this staircase. So plenty of bathrooms, and not so much coolness, but we can think cool thoughts. And now another member of Hanover, George Turner, is going to give us an opening prayer.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As you may know or may not know, our pastor's on a sabbatical, so he's not here today. And it's times like this when we really miss him. Let us pray. Dear God, we thank you for bringing us together to discuss the violence in our community. We pray for peace. And as we gather here, we pray that your Spirit will be with us, that you will bless our thoughts, our discussion, and our actions. We pray this in your name. Amen.
Thank you, and again, I want to thank George and Alice and Hanover Church for welcoming us today, and most importantly, thank all of you for continuing to pack the room and letting us know that you're really here to join this movement and make this a movement for a culture of peace. That's truly the reason that we're here. So George, I really thank you for that prayer for peace and just to guide our thoughts and our minds. Again, I'm Chandra Pitts. I'm the president and CEO of One Village Alliance, which is a local social impact agency based out of Delaware. But the Movement for a Culture of Peace is a highly collaborative effort that actually started in a statewide march that we did last year on September 27th. How many of you were here on September 27th when over 400 individuals, awesome, marched through the city of Wilmington for peace? It was awesome. So it started for a march for a culture of peace, but it didn't stop there, and we thank you for allowing it to continue. I just want to recognize that you are all, this wouldn't be a movement, we wouldn't be here without you. There's organizations like the Coalition Against Gun Violence, Posthum Terrace, the various faith-based organizations who all make up this movement. But most importantly, we've had great support from city officials and very knowledgeable individuals who continue to come here on a monthly basis, talk to you about what they're doing, but most importantly, really guide the dialogue about what we as a community, some of the most important change agents and leaders in our own neighborhoods are you. So this is not the hot seat. And this is not where all the answers will come. We want to open a dialogue up. Yes, we know you have some critical questions, and we're going to have some really informed answers and responses. But the biggest question is, how can we all work together for a culture of peace here in Delaware? So with that being said, I want to just take a brief moment to introduce our panelists in the room, and you'll have an opportunity to ask them some questions. So try to begin to be thoughtful with the understanding of why we're here today, which is to find out how we as a collective community can move together and strengthen a movement for a culture of peace. So we have with us today, I'm really honored to have Ms. Cassandra Marshall with us. She's a commission member of the Governor's Commission on Public Safety. So if you could just help us welcome Ms. Cassandra. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. We also have Chief Bobby Cummings of the Wilmington Police Department. As you all know, he's been working really hard on public safety here in Delaware during his time. And we're very, very honored to have taken time out for all of you to be here on a Sunday morning, but for our mayor, Dennis Williams, to have taken time out on a Saturday morning to be here. So if you could help me. And you know, we never take no, and Mayor Williams said, you know, I have a really important event. It's his class reunion today, but he said I'm gonna take at least an hour of my time and start the day off with the constituents here. So, Mayor, we recognize you have to leave shortly after 10. Thank you for extending that time to more than an hour, and we really appreciate you all being here. We'll have until about 11 o'clock, so we want to get started without further ado. And again, you have your question cards. Marsha Carter is here, myself, George is here, and some others, June and Dorothy. We're going to help kind of gather some of your questions and get as many answered as possible. And one of our great leaders, Jeff Lott, is here to help moderate and facilitate the dialogue, and hopefully you'll have some time to share your voice at the end, okay? Thank you all so much, Jeff.
So as, let me make sure I get this straight. So as Chandra said, our focus today is really on Wilmington's plan to reorganize its police department, which was formulated in response to the report and recommendations of the Wilmington Public Safety Strategies Commission. I think that the city spent some good time in April and May analyzing the recommendations and making a very thoughtful response to it. There were some delays in that, and I think it's probably a good idea that it was that they spent the extra time to come up with a thorough and responsive thing that come back. So, but we're particularly interested in the impact of this plan on our neighborhoods and the streets that are most affected by violence in the city. What differences the community will see as a result of these changes, and how many neighborhood organizations, faith groups, nonprofits, the Movement for a Culture of Peace can help. So as you submit your questions to the panel, we'll give priority to those questions that have to do with that relationship between law enforcement and civic society in our city. And I say our city because I say Wilmington as my city, even though I don't live within its borders. I think one of the things that the Movement for a Culture of Peace has proven is that there's a broad, deep concern about violence, about our city, and about the people who have to experience this kind of violence week in and week out in their streets and neighborhoods. Now, there have been some changes, and we're going to talk about those. But I want to start, I also would just say that Councilwoman Maria Cabrera is scheduled to be here, and we'll just slide her into her chair when she arrives, and we'll begin with questions as well. I want to just have you each take a couple of minutes, 2 or 3, maybe 4 minutes, to introduce yourselves briefly, and then answer or reflect on this question. What key changes in this new plan will help bring about a culture of peace in our community? So the changes, the plan, and peace. So Mayor Williams, why don't you begin and just hold the microphone, if you will.
Good morning, everyone. I want to thank everybody for being here, first of all.
Oh yes, please silence your phones if you have a phone on. I'll do that myself. Oh, it's already there. Thank you. Oh, good morning.
Good morning again, everyone. My name is Dennis Williams, Dennis P. Williams. I was born and raised in this city in the Northeast area. I came from the Riverside Housing Projects, moved to the 1300 block East 23rd, went to the 2700 block of Pine, moved there to Fernwood Place, went to P.S. DuPont, graduated from Delaware Tech Community College, FBI Academy. I have a degree in criminal justice, joined the Wilmington Police Force, became a legislator, now I'm the mayor. I'm very concerned about what's going on in our city, and let me say this to you. I think that there's been some major turns and drop in crime since we implemented Operation Disrupt. But I want to say for a culture of peace, it's going to take everybody in this room, and not to point fingers, not to jump up and down, not to berate one another, beloved. We have to be civilized to one another. In order for things to work, we all have to roll our sleeves up and work for a common cause, not for political gains, not to get our name in the newspaper, not to be on the news, jumping up and down, beating on our chest. We know we've had some issues here. Each one of us in this room can mentor a child. That child that is mentored, 90% of the times, will not be involved in the criminal justice system. And this is where we are at this point. This administration, we mentor children, we volunteer in schools, volunteer in communities. We have Mayor's Fun Day. We bring kids in. We bring teachers in to tutor kids, find out what children are having some major issues. We try to gain the trust of kids because we need to know what's going on inside of those homes, such as if a parent is alcohol abusing, drug abusing. You just can't arrest your way out of this. And I learned this as becoming the mayor more than ever before. My first year in office, we looked and took a decision where we were going to go out and try to arrest our way out of this and clean the streets up. But ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. Doesn't work. Does not work. And I'm one to tell you who sit here and gave that command when I first took over, it was a big mistake. We inherited a mess, but we fought it the wrong way. Now, we looked at readjusting. When Chief Cummings came on board, we decided to take an approach where we're going to be community-based police. We are going to work with the community. We're going to engage the community. And I sent an order out. We're not going to be an occupying army. And I'm not going to respond to people calling in saying we want officers jumping up and down with paramilitary equipment on, assaulting young men in this city. I'm not going to do that. That destroys relationships that we have started to build. I'm not going to put officers out in jumpsuits and helmets and visors. When little kids see that, they become frightened of law enforcement. And when little children become frightened of law enforcement, you have lost the battle, ladies and gentlemen, because those little children will be the next generation of leaders and voters and people who want to make a difference. And this administration is not going to do that. We're going to put officers out in uniform. They're going to be community police officers. And there's going to be 25 officers going to go into community policing. And let me say this in closing. Every officer that puts that uniform on is a community police officer. If they cannot be, they don't need to work here in the City of Wilmington. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Maria Cabrera has joined us. Thank you. We had just started, so don't feel bad. I just wanted to repeat the question that sort of is your prompt for introducing yourself and talking about this question, and that is, what key changes in the new policing strategies plan that the city has released will help bring about a culture of peace in our community? And why don't we just go ahead with you, or actually with Cassandra? You want to take the question now, and then we'll just sort of go back and forth?
Sure,
All
no
right.
problem.
And introduce yourself, please.
Okay. My name is Cassandra Marshall, and I'm the president of the Quaker Hill Neighborhood Association. I am not a native Delawarean. I was born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland, and moved here about 20 years or so ago. Can you not hear me? Do I? Okay. So is this better? Okay, very good. I apologize. I moved to Quaker Hill in West Center City about a dozen or so years ago. A beautiful part of town, a beautifully historic part of town, with a piece of history that is quite unique to Delaware, and that is the history of Harriet Tubman, who is probably ground zero for the movement of culture of peace in this state. Unfortunately, West Center City is also ground zero for some of our worst crime problems. And these crime problems not only affect the people who live in West Center City, but these also spill out into downtown. We've been having issues with businesses that are leaving, and West Center City is not one of the parts of the city where we need businesses leaving. We have children who are definitely at risk, and what I have been involved with a number of my neighbors, some of whom are here, are trying to figure out better ways to make that neighborhood a lot safer. Governor Markell asked me to be a part of his crime commission because he knew that I was really interested in this. And the other thing that the governor also knew is that the city is filled with people who show up regularly to see how they can help and be a part of this process. Every single meeting of the crime commission and all of the meetings that the consultants held, were filled with rooms of people, all of my neighbors, all of our neighbors, who came to find out what do we do to help. And I keep saying this over and over again, but this is a gift, right? I mean, we do not have people in the streets, jumping up and down, going crazy, with cameras pointed at them like they do in places like Ferguson and everywhere else where they are having problems. We have people who are showing up asking to help, right? And we need to start taking a better advantage of that. I think that the current plan as it was submitted by, or the response to the recommendations as it was submitted by the police department is a bit disappointing. And that disappointment is in the accountability issues. How do we know, as the people who show up and ask how do we help, that this is actually working? There's a lot that's here that says that they've implemented and that they've done well before the 31st of March. And I can tell you from where I live and from where I sit, the vision is still pretty grim. People are dying, people are getting hurt, and I don't see the kinds of change that people have been showing up to ask for and to ask to be a part of. And I've gotten my notice that I need to wrap it up, so I'm good. So that will be the end of my statement, and we'll go on to Maria.
Good morning, everyone, and I truly am thankful to be included in this dialogue discussion today. I have lived for 19 years in the north side of the City of Wilmington, not far from the mayor. He was my state representative on 34th Street. When I first came to Wilmington 26 years ago, June 28th, I lived on the west side. I'm now currently living in the beautiful and quaint community of Trinity vicinity, but let's just be real about this. I'm in the hood, okay? That's where I am. I'm across the street, a block away from a liquor store that brings so much negative activity to our city from a corner that is conveniently accessed by 95 in and out, where there are probably more drug sales on that corner than any other corner in the City of Wilmington. And still for 1 year, I've been battling to try to take care of this situation to help that block. Why I believe in that block? Same reason I believe in the city, because there are good people on that block. People who grow gardens, people who have roses. We all know what it takes to grow roses. And I don't think it's fair that that whole block should have to suffer because of a corner filled with people that don't live there. So do we have a problem? Yes, we have a problem. And I agree with the mayor and others that we all have to be held accountable, that we all have to be part of the solution. And I don't believe that more police is the answer, but how we use the current police that we have, and we know that we had a deficit of police, and we know we've inherited some of these problems. So what I believe that the plan, both plans, the mayor and the Crime Commission plan, brings to the table is the additional community policing. The mayor is restoring the community policing unit that previously existed, communication between our residents and police. That is very strong. The crime strategies unit and working closer together with the Attorney General's office and the state and the feds. Because I'll be quite honest with you, it took me going into that liquor store with 2 deputy attorney generals and an ATF agent to start moving the ball around and getting some charges. I'm hoping by the end of summer we can close them down when the federal charges hit, because with the city alone they have 14 points. And they just sat there for years without ever having to paint. But you and I know that we get an instant ticket in a minute. but yet that liquor store sat there looking, and that's just one example. There are many corners like this. I do believe that we need to civilize more positions. The plan does show, the mayor's plan does show bringing in some civilians for current positions. I do believe that we do need another police class, and that's why City Council is the one who put in the $300,000 for the police, new police academy, as well as for additional monitors for those cameras. The most important thing here is accountability. Now, I will tell you this, that in going very carefully through both plans, I do want to support the mayor's plan, and there are many things in there that we can go forward with, but I'm not going to support the addition of 4 more positions unless we're cutting out positions, and we're going to look at the fiscal responsibility of the plan that the mayor has presented, and I do have some numbers to share as we move along.
Good morning, everyone. Good to see you here this morning on this hot day. I would just say real quick to that, these are the kind of days I like. I hate to be cold. I love the heat and humidity, so I am fine. One of the things I'd like to say is I'm not a native of Wilmington. I was born in Georgia, but I've been here since I was 3 years old. So this is my city. I've lived in every area of this city that you can imagine. I was raised in the 1800 block of West 3rd Street and an area that they call Little Italy. I grew up also in the 800 block of West 4th Street, down where McDonald's is and the Hicks Anderson City Center is located. I've lived in Riverside in the 1300 block of East 24th Street. I went to elementary school there. I moved to the 2400 block of Jessup Street for a number of years, where I attended middle school and high school. Then my mother moved us back over to the 1800 block of West 3rd Street prior to me becoming a police officer. And then once becoming a police officer, I moved on Clifford Brown Walk in the 1000 block, where I lived there for about a year and a half. And after that, I moved to the 2300 block of Washington Street, where I stayed with my mother-in-law and my wife's family for a little bit. And then we moved and stayed with my brother on the 2400 block, or actually the 300 block of 24th Street for a little bit until we could get ourselves together. Then we bought a house in the 3500 block of Washington Street, where we currently live today. So I have a lot of interest in what happens around the city, and I grew up here. As it relates to what we're talking about today, and I will just say quickly, I want everyone to understand that what we're doing in terms of our crime plan was not implemented in February or March. It was something that had taken place when the mayor first came in with an initiative that was built around building strong neighborhoods, and that involved community policing. So in 2014, we were approached by the VRN, which is a violent reduction network, and that midsummer going into the fall. And we went to a summit in Washington, D.C., where we were introduced to a lot of people in the federal government, from the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, the U.S. Marshals, the BJA, the Bureau of Justice Assistance, and looking at what we were doing. And early on, we asked them to identify areas where, as a police department, where we believed we had shortcomings. So we asked them to evaluate several things that we were doing. We wanted to look at our criminal investigations division, as we saw we had on the national average, our clearance rate was not on level or with everyone else. So we knew we needed to look at that. We asked them to do an intensive evaluation of that area. We asked them to do a manpower study on our current allocation of personnel that we had. Did we have sufficient personnel to service the city in the way that needed to be done? So they were conducting that evaluation. We asked them to look at our technology, because we knew we were lacking in terms of our analytical data and our ability to analyze the information that we had at hand. So that was one of the things that had started back in that October, November of the previous year. In that February, when we were asked to be a part of the commission, and which I sat on also, and I worked very closely with those consultants that came in to evaluate our police department. I sat with them on a number of occasions to talk about the issues that were impacting our city. and the direction in which we were headed. So as we had identified a number of things that we believe needed to be evaluated, when the commission came in and I sat with those consultants, and at the end of their evaluation, they kind of verified exactly what we were looking at and what we were doing. So when I saw the report come out on that 31st, I was very confident that we were moving forward with a lot of those recommendations as I had met with them and sat with them on a number of occasions. It was not appropriate for me and or the city to respond immediately to that report because there were several things in there that needed to be evaluated. There were things in there that we knew would be of a fiscal impact that we needed time to research and look at. It would have been unfair for me to respond to that report the day after and said, we can do exactly everything in there the way it was intended or recommended to us to be without giving time to look at that. So we took the time that we thought was necessary to evaluate this report, and it was done greater than just myself. I'm sorry, okay. So it was done from a team of the mayor's staff that we sat down and we really went through this report along with my executive staff, and we came out with the response to the recommendations, and we hit them line by line. And that report we made public. It is on the city's website under the police public safety plan, and every document in there that will support what we did. So I'll stop it there. Thank you.
So I'm impressed with the number of places that you lived during the city, in the city.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
No, the young lady.
You all right? Okay. Thank you. I'm curious to know, just from this, by show of hands in this audience, how many of you live within the city limits of Wilmington? Very strong number.
Yes, yes.
How many worship or work or play in the city on a frequent basis?
Right.
How many of you are native Wilmingtonians? Did you? That is it. Yeah, that's really something. Mostly when you meet people in Delaware, they're not from Delaware. I have one more question, and while our panel talks about this, and now we're going to try to keep our answers to about 2 minutes. And while we do that, you have cards on your chairs. If you need a pen, there's pens around. And start writing your questions, and just hold them up, and someone from Movement for Cultural Peace will pick those up. We'll try to lump them together, so if 4 questions about the same thing, we'll just ask at once, that kind of thing. And also with a preference for neighborhoods and what can we do. So my next question for the panel is, what is your vision of how the public, the churches, the neighborhood groups, community groups, the Movement for a Culture of Peace, can participate in reducing violence and creating a new atmosphere? What can the public do to move the ball forward, as we're saying on our poster? Who's got the ball? Mayor Williams, you want to start with that?
Well, first of all, the public can be vigilant for holding all of us accountable. They're elected officials, number one, and I think they're doing a pretty good job of that. But I also still say that the public needs to get more involved with mentoring programs, going into these schools, going into the rec centers, looking at the state budgets and city budgets and county budgets and federal budgets. They're all online, looking at what programs are going to benefit communities, just beyond recreation, communities as a whole. What developments are we going to do for affordable housing? What are we going to do for our senior citizens who spent the golden years here to help them out navigate the rest of their lives? What are we going to do for young people who don't have jobs? And let me say this, everybody looks to the city to create jobs. The city can't do that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that we're going to create jobs, and any mayor that tells you they're going to bring millions of jobs into the city is throwing you a curveball, because it's up to the federal delegation and the state who get money to subsidize and help the city. And when I first got elected, I went to Washington, D.C., and I wanted to know why that, we had to wait for the state to do everything. I don't anticipate holding our hat in our hand or the feds. I'd rather for that money to bypass the state, and I know a senator's in here, but it doesn't matter. I'd rather for that money to bypass the state and come directly to the city of Wilmington, and we don't have to play politics on getting money to do things in our city. Because a lot of times when money's supposed to be driven down to the municipal governments, there's always been some political boondoggling, and I know that from being chairman of Joint Finance. I had to fight all the time because I supported all the cities in our state as the chairman of Joint Finance, and I got a lot of pushback on the way we divvied money up. So, and I think that's unfair, and I think when the programs are rolled out to help communities as a whole and to stop playing politics, I think we're going to be much better off. And it's going to be up to you folks who pull that lever to get that done.
I don't, thank you. I don't think it's necessary for every panelist to answer every question, but if anybody else would like to take on the what can we do question as neighbors and community groups, churches. Councilwoman Cabrera?
Thank you. I did want to answer this question because one of the things is, you know, as a single mom raising my son in the city, we lived in a very nice neighborhood. I feel that somehow I was very secluded from what was going on in the rest of the city, living in the first, until a lot of the crime that's happening in other areas of the city started to come into my neighborhood. When my son witnessed 3 young men breaking into a neighbor's house and they saw that he saw them, they came and they pointed a rifle to his head and said that they were going to shoot him dead if he were to say anything. It took him 2 weeks before he said anything to me, and the chief is my witness. I dragged that child in with me to a council meeting and had him sit and meet with the chief. After that conversation with the chief, he didn't feel safer. He felt that now they were going to target him because the chief said we're going to increase patrols in that area, and that those boys would know was because he told they would come to his school and shoot him dead, and he didn't want to die. And he was so traumatized that he still couldn't cry about it. So violence came to my home through the back door, and in a very, very bad way. So what do we need to do? We need to be vigilant. We can't just sit in our homes watching reality TV shows. We need to be looking at the reality outside our windows. We need to be calling in the police. Sometimes I feel that it's a chore that every time that I leave my home and I go around the corner at 8th and Monroe to get on 95, that here I go again, calling the police because they're loitering on the corner. And I've had the radio room hang up the phone on me when I have called. I don't identify who I am when I call because I want to be treated the same as everybody else. I want to know what my residents go through when they call in a complaint. So sometimes it's not good, and I shared it with the chief immediately. We have a very good rapport. So sometimes we feel like, oh, they're not going to do anything, nothing's going to happen. We can never give up. There are simple things that I believe we can do. Cleaning up the neighborhood, the trash, these vacant properties, holding these property owners accountable, holding the neighbors accountable. We have a new tool now, one of my very first and only ordinance that I presented, the disorderly premises. This is something that you can start calling in because now the people that are actually engaging in the disorderly premise behavior can be held accountable, not just nuisance points for the landlord. It takes too long for those points to accumulate before we can really do anything. We have people that own properties in our city that come in here as a business to make money, and we allow them to do it any which way that they want. So we have to start looking at having a business license in the City of Wilmington as a privilege, just like your driver's license is a privilege. You don't have a right to come into the city and run your business in a way that brings harm to the community. So it does start with us, and it starts with cleaner neighborhoods, holding people accountable, holding everyone accountable, because I believe we should be held accountable as well. We need to get engaged. We know that there's a lot of core issues dealing with unemployment, education, but we know that it's going to take time to fix those things. We can't do that overnight. So what solutions can we start implementing now, here, today? I always say to folks, put a garden in your neighborhood, because when you're out there gardening, you can see what's going on. When a neighborhood looks, well, just like a garden, weeds will not grow in a well-tended garden. These problems will not fester in a well-tended neighborhood. They only fester in those neighborhoods because they know that the neighbors aren't looking and they're not calling it in. You have to become a bigger pain than the people that are on your block.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a line I'm going to remember. You have to become a bigger pain than those people who are on your block. We've talked a little bit about accountability so far, and I wanted to Before we move on to some questions about community policing, I wanted to I'll just read this question. Please explain accountability as it will apply to public safety and the operation of the police department and to turn around mistakes and errors of the past. How are we going to know that these things are getting done? I think we could start with Chief Cummings here.
Accountability begins with the people that are affected by whatever the issue may be. And you're asking those questions of the people that are put in place to make sure change happens. So, as I'm the chief of police, and as it relates to public safety, accountability starts with me, through the mayor. I have, through the proposal, we're putting in a more focused restructuring of the police department to make sure that when our officers who are inspectors are in charge of certain areas of the police department, that is their main focus. They do not have a focus of operations and administration components. So we had 2 inspectors that were cross supervising areas that did not make sense within our police department. So the restructuring, making sure that everyone has a single line of accountability, brings about more accountability. The accountability for the police officers on the street, again, starts with me. So what I've done is I've tasked all of my supervisors to be accountable. And if they're not making sure that the officers on the street do what is necessary, then we are holding the supervisors accountable. Now, in our past culture, once you became a supervisor, you were basically untouchable. So you never saw a supervisor being placed on charges, held accountable for what they did or did not do. They were just allowed to exist and be supervisors on the police department. That is no longer acceptable. So under this administration, I am holding everyone accountable. When you, as a citizen, are approached by an officer and are in a situation that you believe is not acceptable, I'm asking you to make those complaints so that we can address those issues. We're setting up other measures, looking at some of the recommendations, how citizens can better make complaints without feeling intimidated when making that complaint. So right now we're looking at a different location where we're going to have people come in, not necessarily the police department, to make complaints, and we're also restructuring our online complaint services.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that you talked about accountability. Cassandra, do you want to take that one as well?
I do just want to ask, or at least make a couple of points. I think that it's good to get your organization in a place where there is going to be greater accountability. But then there's also the accountability to the people that you work for, right? The people who are expecting, a much safer city. And one of the things that I think has been missing from the plan or the response to the recommendations is what is it that we should see, or what should we expect as change? What should we see 3 months down the line that we will know will come from your implementation of this plan? What should we see 6 months down the line, a year down the line? What will change as a result of this that we will know to come back and ask you about a year from now?
See, and I think when you talk about what the expectations are, the expectations from what you're looking for from us should not come from the police department. The expectations of what is important to you that you want us to be accountable to, we have to have those meetings in which we are open to. What are you looking for from us that will let you see that we're being accountable to you in terms of whether it's statistical data, and that's what that analyst is for, and our people to look at that information? Is it that we do surveys and the community comes back to us and say, not based on arrests, but based on what you've done in your deployment in terms of more officers being present. We're able to sit outside and our kids feel safe being out. Our quality of life has increased. If those are the kind of things that you're wanting us to be accountable for, again, those are the things that we'll look at, building those matrices so that we can measure that and give that back to you. And as long as we hold public forums, we continue to attend the Civic Association meetings, we're open to answering any question and addressing any issue that may come up, and we believe that gives also the accountability.
This is for Mayor Williams. Could you just tell us a little bit about each of the 4 new positions, or 4 positions being added to the police department, and how they will add value to the department and the city as this is implemented in response to the Crime Commission report?
Well, first of all, I'm going to yield to the chief after I make a brief statement. I didn't support those new positions from the beginning. When the chief laid it out and explained to me why he needed us to run the department, I took a step back and I stated, okay, he's the manager. He knows. He knows what he needs in his police department. I thought about it, and we came to a conclusion that, okay, you proved to me that this is going to work. And he said, I'll stake my career on this. I know it's going to work. This was the more lean part of implementing this new management team compared to the commission report. If we had looked at what the commission report wanted, it would have been probably 4 times the amount of money. But looking at the police department's operational standards, the way you had 2 inspectors splitting the department down 50%, if those inspectors, one of them got sick or ill, the chief had to pick up that slack. But now you're dividing it, all this operational ability into 4 people. It's just like any type of quasi or military organization. There has to be a span of control, and there has to be someone at the top that's accountable for the things that go on in each one of those categories. And the way the chief laid it out, I think it was great and it was perfect because now we will have total control and people will be held accountable because it will be so easy to go back and click and find out what people are doing. A quick incident. We had an area that all 4 blocks were loitering and people going crazy and drinking booze, and the duty officer was called by the inspector, and the duty officer was told to clean that area up. Within 24 hours, we started getting emails in our office, and people were saying that the neighborhood looked like it was back in the 70s. All the blocks are clear, and they have been clear since Memorial Day. So I think things are being very effective on our accountability piece at this time. And one of the things that I'm making perfectly clear again, I ran for a term of 48 months, not 96 months. I'm not afraid to make decisions. I'm a member of the Fraternal Order of Police. I have been since 1975, but I'm making tough decisions. They are very angry with me. It does not matter. Leaders do not cow down to situations. I got 13 lawsuits against me because of the decisions that I made as the mayor, and I'm going to continue to do that. People will do their job, or it will be like I said, there's 7 doors in this building. Pick the one you want to go out of. You will do your job, and it's just that simple.
Just give you a couple of 2 minutes or so to just kind of outline what the 4 positions
Yes.
are and what their function will be.
Yes. The 4 new positions that were added,
And please get as close as the mic.
the 4 new positions that were added, or that we're requesting, 2 inspectors, and in essence they would be deputy chiefs. So we have 4 inspectors. The 2 other positions, one is a director of communications. That director of communications is solely responsible for getting out the message of the police department in a positive way, and that would be a civilian position. That is a person who would have a journalistic background, and that's what they've done or what they do. Then we also have a civilian position. That would be our technology. It's called the Chief Information Officer. But the basis for that is someone to directly look at the technology that we have. How can we best utilize what we have, and what do we need to bridge those gaps in our current technology status? So those are the 4 new positions.
Thank you. Any comments, Maria or Cassandra?
2 things. I guess I want to answer the accountability question along with this. As I was elected citywide, my responsibility to you as the residents is to have fiscal responsibility, because as we know, council votes on the budget. So the concerns that we have with the additional positions are this. Number 1, the Crime Commission report says that we can make the changes with what we have. We have a police force of 320, which is in excess of what any other cities have per capita. We also, the police budget is a $55 million budget, which is 37% of the overall city budget. So the cost of the changes with the mayor's plan would come out to $827,000 on paper per year. But the cost that we don't know about, the costs that aren't being shared with you, is that when we add those positions and we hired from within, there are pension costs associated with those positions. The pension for the additional 2 inspectors would be $169,000 if we hire from within. However, if we brought people from the outside, those pension costs would drop to $8,000. We need to be fiscally responsible. We as a city must deliver services in a more efficient way. And the administration had a chance to do this when we were cutting out 8 vacant positions out of the fire department. And as we know, those changes proposed by council were vetoed by the mayor, and we were not able to override. Good government calls for working efficiently with less. So when lean times come in emergencies, we are prepared. Now, we are looking at a budget that shows a surplus. That surplus doesn't come until the end next year in 2016, June 30th. We cannot be using up a surplus that doesn't exist because the current budget does not take into consideration the jobs that we're going to lose with the DuPont moving out, or the fact that Shamor still has not decided whether they're going to stay or go, and not to mention the endless companies that are threatening to leave. So I ask this question: if we're adding a communications officer, which I think is great, someone with skills and maybe more experience in working with the media, so we don't have articles like Murder Town USA come out again, are we getting rid of the public information officer position? Are we getting rid of the full-time computer IT person if we're bringing in the person to do the IT? Because these are the things that we on council have to be mindful of to be fiscally responsible. The overtime, that's another issue that we had. We had to vote for another $1.2 million added to the police budget. We know that won't be as much of an issue with the new academy. So what are we being as fiscally responsible as we need to be with the mayor's new plan?
Thank you. Mayor Williams has said that he really has to go very soon, so I wanted to just ask him one more question, and this is from the audience. How often do we go, I'm not sure who we is, but how often do we go into the hot spots of the community and speak with youth and ask them what can we do to help, and why do they want, and what do they want to do? I think it's a matter of, if I understand the question, can the person who wrote that question clarify this? Okay. So, yeah, I get the question. Mayor Williams, do you want to respond to that in terms of what the city is doing on those, in terms of?
Well, first of all, I want to
community?
thank the Boys and Girls Club because they just instituted a program where they're going to be open till midnight, starting, I think, within the next week or so. And I really want to thank George and his group for the work that they're going to be doing in the city, keeping a lot of rec centers open to midnight. And I think with the complement of Parks and Recreations, we were going to do 11 now. We're going to probably try to push to midnight also, with the complement of both of those groups doing what they have to do to help youth and keeping the pools open early and opening them up before school closes, and recreational programs, athletic programs. This mayor, I go all over the city. I go everywhere. I sit in, this may sound funny, but I don't eat a lot. That's why I keep my weight down. I go to Popeye's Chicken, and these kids that never even had an opportunity to meet a mayor before, they're so impressed. I think we're doing a great service to them, sitting there, and they come in, they talk to us, they feel so comfortable. I go into dollar stores in communities. I stand on corners and tell people, look, you know, you can't do this. You can't stand here. I sit on stoops with folks, and the young people are just they're starving for attention. And some of these kids want to come home with me. I mean, it's so bad that some of the conditions they live in. It's way beyond the mayor's office and the city alone to combat this problem. There's so many people who've lost everything. I mean, they've lost everything. They've lost their jobs, they've lost their dignity, and they keep hearing about these job programs, and they get certificates. They can't do anything for their children. And ladies and gentlemen, this is where the problems are. This is where the problems are. We're thinking about opening a food closet in the mayor's office because we have people to come in on Wednesday who's hungry. Northeast Social Service Center is booked to the hilt. They have no more services for these people. I mean, it is heartbreaking. We stay there sometimes at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. This is what we're dealing with. And this is not coming from a survey. This is coming from people. We have parents that bring all their children in. Last Christmas Eve, we went out and bought toys. We had people coming in, getting the toys from under the tree up until about 8 or 9 o'clock at night because they had nothing. And these are the people that we've forgotten, ladies and gentlemen, and they're not going to go away. They're really not going to go away. And these are the young folks that if we don't help them and stabilize their families, these are your criminals of the future.
Thank you. Before you, I want to just thank Mayor Williams for being here, and we're sorry you have to leave, but we understand. Appreciate your candor and your support of our movement as well. Thank you.
And I apologize for leaving. This is an all-class reunion. I'm going to see some folks today I haven't seen in 40 years. I didn't attend the functions yesterday because I had to work, and I don't want people to think that, I'm blowing them off because I'm the mayor. That'll be the next thing. Some of my classmates will be writing in the news journal saying he's gotten so big he doesn't even want to come and see us that I haven't seen since 1971. I don't need any more negative press. So I love you all. God bless the city of Wilmington.
Thank you. And enjoy your reunion. Okay. Chief Cummings, you wanted to elaborate a little bit on that, the question about what's being done sort of at the street level.
Yes. One of the things that we're doing to engage the youth, we've started the Civilian Police Advisory Group. And as a part of that group, and we're still reaching out, I have 2 young men that are from the streets that are part of that Civilian Advisory Group. Because one of the things that, as we look around this room and we look at a lot of different meetings that we go to, they are not at the table. We're talking about a lot of things that affect them, but they're not in the room. So I'm reaching out and have been reaching out to get them to the table, and we're going out to where they are to get them to a point where we can understand what the issues are that they're dealing with. Because again, we're talking around them, we make policies around them, we arrest them, but we don't engage them. So that's one of the things that we're doing, and they are part of our Citizens Police Advisory Group.
Thank you. I'm going to move on now to the whole question of community policing, what it means, and how it best might be implemented and supported by our communities themselves. Oh, wow, that's much louder. By the communities that we live in. And I think we could start with, since you're a neighborhood leader, Cassandra Marshall.
Okay. Community policing, as
Get
I've
real
told,
close to your mic.
Okay, I'm sorry. As I've told everybody, I live in Quaker Hill, and we have had community policing for almost as long as I've had our community police officers. And we have had some great relationships with those officers. For a very long time, we had many more officers than were assigned to us recently. But I have always been a great supporter of this program. If you know who your officers are, I've actually been I leave my home in the morning to go to work, and I see people standing on the corner doing the wrong thing. I take a picture, I send it to my police officer, and they're dealing with it in a few hours. So, this has been just a great program for us. When it was pulled back, it wasn't nearly as effective as it was, but one of the great things about this plan is that community police is going to be back, and there's going to be a number more officers in all of the neighborhoods, which is a great thing for everybody to take advantage of. One thing that is difficult about this current deployment is that it also takes 2 of its best practitioners off of the street, right? So, Lieutenant Ciotti and Sergeant Ferris, who are the face of this unit, or who have been the face of this unit for a very long time, are no longer going to be involved with this unit to pass on their knowledge and their institutional capabilities. And so that, I think, is a bit of a weakness. You put a bunch of new guys out on the street, and all of those relationships have to be started over pretty much from scratch. But community policing, if I could have, I would definitely have the entire police deployment be based on community policing. This was something that Bud Friel and Kevin Kelly had put together a number of years ago. We tried really hard to get that so that every single neighborhood had community policing on a 24/7 basis. particularly those neighborhoods that have a lot of crime on the streets. We couldn't do that, and I think that there's a number of us who would still like to see that happen, because once you get to know who your police officer is, once you get to know that there are people that you can contact to deal with some of your issues, when you get to know that you can trust some of these folks to not come knock on your door and, you know, point out the fact that you're the person who's talking about the horrible things going on in the house next door, you can start making some big changes, and you can start making those big changes fast.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
A corollary to this same question is the whole concept of community policing now going to be part of the training of every officer? I think it was you that said that every officer is a community policeman, policing person.
And in that, you're correct, Jeff. And to comment on Cassandra's comments, again, from my level down, every officer is a community policing officer and expected to be that. Not everyone has the same personal skills when they communicate and deal with our community. However, through the VRN, we've identified some training that's going to begin July, starting with the executive staff. It's called Blue Courage. And what that training does, it reminds every officer why they became a police officer, and then it sets the tone because it is the national flagship training in community policing. We're starting with our executive staff, and then it's starting in September, every officer gets that same training. The deployment scheme that we put out in terms of sector deployment, that is solely designed so that every officer who is deployed within their sector gets to know who lives there, who works there, who's visiting, what businesses, churches. That is a way to have consistency. So when you have consistency, you build a level of respect and trust for the officers who work your area. And I understand that there are officers who are good at certain things. However, if we left those officers in those positions forever, we limit their ability to move and become the future leaders for this police department. What I'm looking at, there was something else in the plan that said we need to do career tracks for our officers. And if you could career track officers on this police department, which has an authorized strength of 320, again, you limit their ability to gain the necessary knowledge to move around this police department as leadership moves out and retires. So if you don't plan for the future and we career track our people, we're locking the city into a mode where our officers will not have the necessary training moving forward. The other piece, the officers who've been moved out of their areas that they were previously in, they have not retired. The knowledge that they have does not leave. They are still in communication with all the other officers on the police department and can pass that information forward. So again, that is another area in which you build moving forward, not detracting.
Will effectiveness at community policing be part of the evaluation of your officers?
Absolutely. That is part of the surveys that will go on throughout the different neighborhoods in terms of how they're doing. We're setting up, again, that criteria, not just the police department, but we're engaging the community to find out what are the things you want us to evaluate so that we know that we were doing good. Again, I don't want to come back to the community and say, we've made this many arrests, and then you look at me and you go, well, I still got all this happening in my neighborhood, and this is happening, and I still can't go outside. So we need the help from the community to help us look at the areas in which we need to evaluate. We don't want that to be our decision alone.
Councilwoman Cabrera?
Yeah. Chief, with all due respect, I mean, I believe that what you're saying is very accurate and very true. We do need to make sure that police officers are well-rounded. But one of the issues that we have in our community, which is very real, is an issue of trust out here. We have people doing some really bad things on the street. There are people who will sit there and witness a shooting, and no one will come up and speak. And I'm sorry, you can take all the new police officers and train them in community policing, but when it takes years to build those relationships, and when you take an officer off the street where those relationships have been built in a time that is so critical like now, that is a bad move, a very bad move. And I know one thing, that Captain Ciotti doesn't need to learn how to be a patrol because he started out in patrol. And I know that Sergeant Ferris doesn't need to be in the House Sergeant office because that is not where his personality and what he does with the community is best fitting the citizens of Wilmington. Now, should we partner some of the new recruits with people like Ciotti and Ferris and others and teach them how to be great community police officers? That's what we should do. But this late in Captain Ciotti's career, with the relationships that he has in our community, as a patrol officer, yes, I can see where he can be out there and maybe with the patrol officers that he's working with, teach them how to be better community police officers. That I can see working. But these are about relationships and trust. And we have had every community police officer yanked off our streets once we have trust. And one of the things that the people complain about, perfect example, the Artise Brown shooting. Why would the police show up with the culprit when he was caught to the crime scene when the families are there and the people are there talking to the police officers? There are things that we need to do better to establish trust in this community. We really do, because otherwise in that, people are going to subscribe to this don't snitch rule. And community policing is very key. That is the number one key. And everyone, I'm glad that you're doing what you're doing, because everyone should subscribe to it. But face it, not everybody has the personality to be a community police officer. So we can do the best to teach them the basics, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be good at it. When somebody excels and they're good at something, that's where you let them get into that niche so that they can do it well.
I'll just make one comment towards that.
Sure.
Again, as I state, from my level, I like to think that I'm a good community policing officer. And I have built relations throughout our city, and that I have excellent contacts. However, I know that I won't be here forever. I would love to be the chief forever and continue to build stronger and better relationships. People will move on. People will have other opportunities to do different things, is why as a police department, we need to develop all of our people, and we hold them accountable to the standards that we set moving forward, that if they do not handle what is expected of them, there is accountability measure that will handle that. So we have things in place to develop for the future, not just today.
Thank you. This is a question that is more about quality of life, and I think it's one of the questions that a lot of residents have. So what is the relationship between street cleanup, literally trash, buildings, and neighborhood strength? And what is the can we replace our liquor stores with food stores? What is and also what is the status or level of racial discrimination in housing in Wilmington? Are we doing anything about racial discrimination in housing, which is also economic discrimination in housing, or racial discrimination in the economy as well? So this is a huge question, but let's just start with the trash. Cassandra?
I could spend all day talking about trash, all day. Okay.
Well, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, good. I think that certainly a place that is cleaner, that looks like it's being taken care of, looks like a place that criminals and other people who want to do the wrong thing in your neighborhood might be a little more afraid of, all right? Because it looks like people are outside. It looks like people are looking. It looks like people are taking care of what it is that they do. But the flip side of that is that we also have a lot of rentals in this neighborhood, in our city, right? We have a lot of landlords. We have a lot of landlords who are not held accountable for the state of their properties, right? There are some of these places that are not livable. We have places where we have landlords who are taking, suitcases of cash in order to just not look at what's going on in their places. And so we need a better partnership with people like L&I to help us deal with this, because there are a lot of landlords who are extracting so many resources out of this city, but they are putting absolutely none of it back. And people need to live in decent places. We need L&I to be able to help make sure that that happens, and we also need a better partner in the city to make sure that that happens.
I can tell you that driving around, and especially where I live now, I call West Center City, and I don't say this to offend anybody, the wastelands of Wilmington. And I'll tell you why. Because it seems that for some reason, this city has completely ignored this one little neighborhood which connects from our downtown area to our west side. And not to mention, when we go up and down 4th Street, another state-owned, heavily populated road, that's another cesspool of trash. Everybody that has to go past Monroe to get out of the city to get on 95 or 7th and Washington, all they see is trash, trash, and more trash. Now, mind you, I also see people out there in the morning, like those good neighbors I spoke about. They're cleaning the trash from the night before, from the party scene before at the corner. Every single day, they're out there sweeping. For some reason, that area, 9th and Monroe, that area seems to be a place where people think it's okay to come and dump your trash. As soon as we got the sofa off the corner, the mattress, we now have a sofa on the corner. I take pictures and I send them in. I work directly with the commissioners, with Jeff Starkey, as well as James Rhodes. They do respond, but how do we stop it from even happening? Who are these people? Where do they come from? Our city has gotten absolutely filthy. In the last 6 months to a year, I see nothing but trash everywhere. It is great concern to me that if a sanitation worker comes by to pick up your trash or your recycle, that they would not call special pickup to have a mattress picked up. I let it sit there for 3 weeks before I couldn't take it anymore, because I was doing that as a test. That when we have the snow days or the off days or whatever days they don't work, that there is a pileup of trash. That on the north side, we have an inspector that will give everybody an instant ticket if your bag of trash is not in a receptacle. But in West Center City, on 800 North Adams, everybody has their trash out in bags. So we need to do a much better job. One of the things that people said about Wilmington back in the day was that for most cities, this is a very clean city. Not my Wilmington, not anymore. It's only clean in the neighborhoods where people clean. And when you have irresponsible people that don't clean, then what happens? Everything Cassandra said about the landlords, I don't need to repeat. That's why my ordinance is in place, to hold them accountable. And the next piece is going to be the business revocation. The liquor stores, don't even get me started on the liquor stores. Why do we have 40 liquor stores in a small concentrated area? Those liquor stores, we have them in places where people are poor, where they're addicted. They don't need to be there. There should be something vibrant on a corner, not a liquor store. Drive around and count them. And everywhere you go, you will see the loitering, the people, the folks sitting on the steps, and the open containers, and the trash. Everywhere there's a liquor store, other than maybe a few nice liquor stores on the west side and Trinity Liquors, you will not see, not Trinity Liquors, the one over by Gilpin, you will not see trash. Otherwise than that, they're all filthy.
Thank you. Along the same lines, Chief Cummings, I'm curious about your thoughts on what is widely known as like broken window policing. Is that something that we can apply in Wilmington? Citing people for these minor violations to overall improve the quality of life?
Yes, we do participate and have implemented broken windows theory. Again, it's just another term for environmental design. As it relates to what was just commented on, a lot of that is not a policing issue. However, it does impact policing. So at our weekly TAPS meetings that we hold every Wednesday, we have L&I, the Attorney General's Office, Public Works, all the agencies that are affected by the issues that we're talking here today. We come to strategical planning meetings to talk about how do we address some of these issues. The captains who are in charge of their sectors, they will be deploying a lot of this to the community policing officer who falls within the unit to go specifically and address these type of issues along with L&I, Public Works. So we have a focused effort on that. Again, we know that that is not a primary policing issue, but we know that it does impact how we police and what goes on within our city.
Just to let you know sort of what the shape of the next 20 minutes or so is, I think we're going to continue to take your written questions for about 15 or 20 more minutes, and then use the last 15 minutes or so of our time until 11 o'clock to allow people to ask questions directly from the floor. We're not going to, we don't really want a lot of speeches, but if you have other things in your heart that you think that we should be asking, you'll get the opportunity. I want to talk a little bit about incarceration, and I'll come back to it towards the end, but I want to ask Chief Cummings and then maybe get one more comment on this. As a police officer with the task to lock people up, one of your tasks is to lock people up. How do you feel about incarcerating youth versus trying to get to the root of their issues and help them out to make their lives better. I ask because locking them up is just temporary housing. They will be back outside to play as they did before. And I know that there's others in the room who are concerned about mass incarceration as well.
That is an issue that, we don't take lightly, or especially me, I don't take lightly. People need to be held accountable for the decisions that they make. I don't care what your circumstance may be. We all, as human beings, know the difference between right and wrong. Where we have an opportunity to give someone a second chance, or maybe have a situation that we have some discretion over, we try to instill that into our officers, and we try to direct people to programs. We try to direct them to avenues where they won't get into this trouble. But when they do get in trouble, we are accountable for bringing people to justice, to whatever their incident may have been, to answer to that. Sometimes living in an urban environment, and the city in which we live, being predominantly minority individuals that we're going to deal with, that's who generally is going to be arrested in our city. The individuals who are impacting the crime within our city. And those are the people that we go after to make life better for all the residents who live here and do the right thing every day. So that's why we have focused deployment efforts. Our TAPS meetings are based on analytical data for dealing with the individuals that are impacting crime. We have the intelligence that tells us who needs to be dealt with. So we're trying to pinpoint the individuals that need to be pulled out of our community that are causing the problems. And we know that that percentage is a small percent of people that are doing it.
Any other comments on the incarceration issue?
You know, this has been all throughout the commission process. This was a question in almost all of the meetings. And I think that I agree with the chief. You know, there are people who are not doing the right thing, and those people need to be held accountable. But you also have to start figuring out and start talking about how to help these folks make better choices. And that's a longer term problem. That's a longer term issue. I mean, how do we start working out how to get the State Department of Health and Human Services to support parents better, right? How do we get schools to educate kids better, right? And these are not, unfortunately, these are not police problems, and frankly, the City of Wilmington doesn't have a whole lot of influence over this. You know, these are the things that we have to go back to the state and ask for better support services for the people who live in our neighborhoods so that they have the skills and the capabilities and the resources to, to help their kids a lot better than they've been able to.
So this reminds me of another issue that's facing us in Delaware right now, and that is there's a bill in the legislature that would increase mandatory sentencing for juveniles who possess guns. And I wondered if you could just tell me briefly how you feel about mandatory sentencing in general and that particular bill, SB 12, I think it's called. We'll just really quickly for each of you.
I've talked about this before, and frankly, I don't support that. I've actually told the Attorney General that if you are going to have bills that ask for more punishment on kids, that needs to be accompanied by bills that support better education, support better services to families. You cannot just punish people. It doesn't help. You have to be able to be in a position to support people better.
Going to jail is not a deterrent, and that has been proven over and over again. What upsets me when I look at the amount of money that is put into our prison system is, why are we not taking this captive audience while they're there and rehabilitating them? Yes, we know that their body will physically detox off the drugs if we have people that are ill with drug addiction. but their minds and the rest of them are not ready. And then we put them out into the street, and we expect them to be able to just go out there and function like normal members of society, when we know that it's harder to get a job because you've been in jail, when most of them have to go back to whence they came from, which we know already is a drug-ridden area. We know that the peer pressure is going to be there. So how can we support anyone, especially our youth? Let me tell you, these kids are not, the chief can tell you, who are the shooters? They're 14 to 17. These kids did not just grab a gun and go out there and decide that human life has no value. They start changing right at 11 and 12. If you don't catch them, you have to go down that early if you don't catch them. And I think that one thing that we talked about was support for mothers. I propose that we, the mothers, especially after what happened to Ortiz Brown, a 24-year-old mother who left behind a 2- and a 4-year-old, we, the mothers, are going to have to be the ones to organize in order to have a culture of peace. We are the ones who are going to have to go door to door and try to support these other mothers, because a lot of them are living in poverty, disparity, they don't have the education, they've given up. So this is what we have to do, go to the core of the home. It's not an overnight fix, but more jail time and sticking these young people in jail for the rest of their lives, that's where they learn how to be real criminals.
Thank you. Chief Cummings,
Yes.
Would the bill that's in the legislature be an effective tool to help you?
Well, I believe, as they stated, there is an educational piece to this that needs to happen. And we know that there is also an economic piece that plays in this. However, when you have repeat gun offenders, no matter what their age, the message needs to be sent to those individuals. So whatever the time is, may be, I don't know, but I know there needs to be a strong message around repeat offenders.
Okay. One person asked, how can I connect with the mentoring programs that the mayor described? I think maybe we'll leave that for the audience to answer that question, and when we have some open microphone time. Are violent gangs a problem in Wilmington, and what is being done to address that?
Okay.
Chief?
All right, yes. And again, in terms of gangs, I don't know that we have organized gangs. We have individuals who are loosely affiliated with each other based on geography, the areas in which they live. They don't have this code of some gang mentality where it's all written out that you would believe there's an organized structure there. But I do believe that we have individuals who deal with each other and have some of the same mentality because of where they live and what seems to be the fad at the time. So it went from, just selling marijuana and/or to selling cocaine or crack. Now it's heroin. So it changes. And so I don't know that we have gangs. But now how are we dealing with that? We do have a intelligence officer who works with state and county police. And we develop that information around those individuals, again, who do frequent the same areas, who are dealing with each other, so we can tie in the cross connections, because we know there are not jurisdictional boundaries that they have. We as a police department, we might have our jurisdictional boundary and what we are designated to police, but we do have the relationship with all the other agencies around the state. The Colonel and I, as I stated a number of times, from the Delaware State Police, he and I are good friends. We grew up in the same area of town. The Colonel from the Newcastle County Police, he and I are very good friends as we came up through the ranks through our different departments around the same time period. So we meet at these TAPS meetings I talk about. We go to their TAPS meetings. They come to our TAPS meetings. The colonels and I, along with the Director of Public Safety, we have individual meetings where we sit down and we talk about the issues that impact the city, the state, and the county. So we do have measures in place to deal with what a lot of people want to consider gangs and these loosely affiliated groups.
I don't have the details, but I know that there's the red shirt gang, the white shirt gang, and I heard about the black shirt gang. I know that the Latin Kings are pretty much thriving in our city as beyond. there's gangs. I know there's gangs. And a lot of the stuff that happens is gang-related and a lot of retaliation. I know that every officer I ask when there's a shooting and another one happens a day later or an hour later, oh no, we don't know that it's retaliatory. Of course, they're not going to give me any information, and I understand. However, you're not going to tell me that 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, because it does happen. The last few shootings that happened on Broome Street between the areas of 3rd and 5th on Broome, I'm sure that that was all retaliatory. And a lot of it does have to do with gangs. Now, back when Tony Ession was with the Delaware State Police Department, and I'm talking maybe 15 years ago, they did a whole story, it came out on Delaware Today, of the fact that there are gangs in Delaware. Now, some of them are really embedded in Sussex County, and they do come up here. So there is gang activity, maybe not at the level that we see in other major cities, but it's here, and we would be denying a fact that if we don't deal with some of what's happening with these gangs and start doing some of the negotiations and the interrupting that the interrupter program is supposed to be doing, we're still going to have more shootings on our street. We know these shootings are isolated, and yes, then you have innocent bystanders that are now getting caught up in the crossfire. But when we look at the geographical area of where some of these things are going on, a lot of this is beef. They have beef with each other, and it may be individuals, but it also is gang-related.
You brought up violence interruption, and Cassandra, can you speak to the Commission's report, its recommendations on the city's Cease Violence program, and what has happened with that in the city's response?
The Commission had recommended that the Cease Violence program actually become
Can you also just explain what Cease Violence is for those who don't know?
I may not be the best person to talk about what the Cease Violence program is, and maybe the Chief or Maria might be able to do that a little bit better. But the basic theory of this program is that you would take people who are well known in communities and well known to people who might be doing, might be causing the kinds of problems that we have in communities, and use them as people to start pulling these folks out of their problems. And the Commission had recommended, right now this is reporting to the Parks and Recs Department, and the Commission had recommended that this actually come out of Parks and Recs and go more into, or at least be supervised by the Police Department, so that there would be some accountability there and a little bit more integration in terms of what the Police Department is trying to do. And then we'll let
Chief Cummings, do you want to respond as well?
I will tell you today that Cease Violence is not a part of the Wilmington Police Department, and it is not intended to be a part of the Police Department. If Cease Violence was seen to be a subpart or subgroup of the Wilmington Police Department, it would not be effective at all, because the street credibility that the individuals who have that are part of that, if they are seen to be an agent of the police department, it would not work. So that's why in our response, we said it is not applicable to us. It is a nonprofit organization, and it is not intended to be part of the police department.
Quickly, yes.
I will just add, in the words of Councilman Nnamdi Chukwocha, as he spoke during the budget vote, that he also did not support, that he felt that the program in Wilmington is not working as it's supposed to be working, that the interrupters are not interrupting anything, that at the shooting, again, of the young woman, Artise Brown, the interrupter was standing by the fence talking to him instead of going out there and talking to the community and trying to find out what actually happened. And that's just one incident. Anyone can go back online and watch how passionately Councilman Chukwocha spoke. He is a man that doesn't say much, but when he speaks, everybody listens. And that day, the passion and the anger in his voice is to see that this is a program that he went out and found and brought into the city of Wilmington is not being managed correctly.
All right, I have one final question, and it's really my question, so I hope you'll indulge me. I've been reading this book called Locked Down, Locked Out: Why Prison Doesn't Work and How We Can Do Better. It's a very powerful account of a family impacted by heroin addiction and basically an investigation into what the author calls prison nation. And I'm going to ask, since changing the nature of our community and our relationship with the police and the criminal justice system is not just about locking up the bad guys, I want to take the discussion to a kind of a visionary level. And I'm going to read this passage from the book, and I would really like to have your own vision of the future that this passage points to. The author of this book is Maya Schwenar. The word incarcerate stems from the same root as the word cancel. Both mean to cross something or someone out, whether with bars or lines or actions. Decarceration, then, is also a movement towards uncanceling people, not just by fighting for their release, but by recognizing and supporting their humanity. So, what is your vision for a culture of peace in our city and our state that recognizes everyone's humanity?
Real quickly, I guess one of the things that I would like to see in a perfect world, obviously the prevention, but once someone is incarcerated, as I had mentioned, I think that our prisons should be a place where we can rehabilitate people, where we educate them while they're there, so the things that maybe they didn't get when they were out on the street, they would have while they're there, and that they can come out and actually be contributing and positive members of society. I think that that is important. I also feel that people who suffer from illnesses such as mental illness and the drug addiction, which is also an illness, that incarceration is not the solution for them. That instead of incarceration, we should have rehabilitation, and that we should do everything we can to not toss out people that we look at as broken. Because most folks will tell you that once somebody's been to jail and they come out, oh well, that too bad. They made bad decisions. People make bad decisions every day. Hair color, what did I wear? You know, we make bad decisions. They may not be decisions that end up in breaking the law, but we use bad judgment. So when someone, especially someone young, when we talk about youth being in jail, we have an opportunity to rehabilitate a person, to nurture the person, because I will say it every day. These people were not born bad. Those babies came into the world innocent. They are a product of their environment. And then some people, yes, they might just have something really wrong with them, and we may give up on them. But I personally believe that we should never give up, that we are children of God, and that we should always try to rehabilitate, to educate, and to invest in human life, because that's human capital, and we toss that to the side all too quickly in this country.
My vision for the future, if this was a perfect place, the City of Wilmington will be a place where families would be safe, where families would be able to get the resources that they need to be able to keep their families safe, to be able to make sure that their children are educated, to make sure that they have things to do during the day, rather than having to live with the effects of basically the war on drugs, right? Which it ends up being a war on poor people and a war on people who have addiction problems. We need to make sure that the people who do have addiction problems get the treatment that they need, get the mental health help that they need, but we also need to make sure that we are supporting families in the way that they need to. One of the things that I worry about for the future, we always talk about, being able to protect our children and taking care of our kids and so on and so forth. And I think that the thing that scares me the most is that I think that we do not like our kids very much, and I think that they are going to get that. And we, all of us who are grown people, should be scared of that, because when they get ready to take over, they're not going to have any compassion for us, because it doesn't look like we have a whole lot for them.
Chief Cummings,
Yes.
a vision for a future?
My vision is that everyone has a chance or has an opportunity when presented to them that everyone has an opportunity for education. My undergrad degree and master's degree is in human services, has nothing to do with criminal justice background. So I'm an advocate for people, and I would like to see people, again, have an opportunity, and then take it, not just have the opportunity, but take advantage of the opportunity when presented. And they talk about luck, you know, people say good luck, and I've come to understand good luck to mean that it's preparation, when preparation meets opportunity. So if you've done all the necessary prerequisites up front, and you've taken advantage of the educational opportunity that you've gotten, that you take advantage of when someone has information to share to you, you listen to it, and that when you see people of different races and different backgrounds, that you at least step back and understand that everybody's not on the same page, everybody's not coming with the same experience, everyone has their own frame of reference, and that when you're able to understand that, not that you have to agree with it, but you can take a look at yourself as an individual, and you can take that information and listen. Just listen to it. And then you, with the understanding, you can move forward. And as we move forward, in that understanding, that we take advantage of that preparation and then that opportunity that you've built because you were able to sit back and have it, and come to a clear understanding of what's going on.
Thank you so much, all three of you. The reason I asked that question is because I think that it's our job to not just to deal with the things that are happening day in and day out in our lives, but to have a vision for the future. And part of creating this culture of peace is for us to envision a better future for our city and our state. Now we have 15 more minutes, and just raise your hand. We'll pass the microphone around. I promised my friend in the front row to get the first question because I didn't get to ask it, and it's a very good one.
And one thing we just, again, want to be respectful of everyone in the room. We only have 15 minutes left. We got a lot of questions, answers. Please brief a question or a comment. So.
Good evening, good morning, whatever it is, I'm still asleep. My question was, hacking having been targeted once y'all went into the House Bill 12, and that's what my question is basically, and I'm asking for this.
He's right in front of the speaker.
Yeah, okay, this is better. My question actually leads from the House Bill 12, and what happens is, I'm not sure that a lot of individuals understand exactly what House Bill 12 is. House Bill 12 is not about locking them up. What House Bill 12 is, incarcerating and getting them treatment for a certain amount of time, as if a child, it gets taken away from his mother who is abusive, they go to a foster home to get their life better. So we talk about taking them from a place that's not good for them, putting them in a treatment facility. Now, my question in relation to House Bill 12 is this. Chief Cummings, would you be open to meeting with each family who lost a child to bring them up to date on their case and listen to their leads and act on it? I'm asking that because a lot of family members have leads who did things to their children, and it's like it's being overlooked by saying we can't do certain things. But if a mother is asking you to come get Hope because she believes Hope did it, why y'all not questioning Hope? Pressure bust pipes.
Well, I can tell you that as we realigned and redeployed, and we're building better protocols in responding to major incidents and homicide scenes of that nature, we are building that into our protocol where I'm trying to get the command staff to go out to the families and we have that conversation, because part of the issues, it was viewed as if we don't care. So we're trying to change that perception, is why I get my command staff out into the neighborhoods. So we're looking to build that into our protocol as we move forward.
I think mine's kind of piggyback.
Stand up, please, Marshall.
Oh, sorry. I think mine's kind of somewhat of that. You were speaking about effectiveness, and I was wondering, and I didn't really hear about it. feel like the solving of homicides should really tie into like effectiveness and measurable outcomes.
Absolutely.
And I was really concerned to hear you say that there weren't any gangs in Delaware. Even in the music, if you listen to some of their, like this whole culture of music in Wilmington, Delaware, right now alone, that definitely would make one believe that there's definitely gangs in Wilmington.
I'm not going to argue the point on that, but I will tell you that if you did a little research through what they determine gangs to be and what we perceive them to be, you know, I'm not going to tell you your perceptions are ever wrong. I won't say that. But I will tell you, you just need to do a little bit more research into what they consider gangs to be. In terms of the rate of homicide clearance, we've created some new protocols where we meet with the Attorney General's office on a monthly basis and review homicides. And within the last couple of months, we've been able to come to some resolution on at least 6 of the homicides that we've had. So we know that this process moving forward is going to be excellent for us. We still have a lot of work to do, but we are moving in a different direction.
My name is Lanita Brooks. I had a son that was killed February 16th, 2015. I just want to know, how many times do you give a person before you say enough is enough with a gun charge? Because from my understanding, the boy that shot my son, he had a prior gun charge. And he knew that he was looking for my son, but he hunted my son down and he shot him and kept on shooting him until he knew my son was down. I just want to know how many chances do a person need to put them behind bars and say, yeah, they do have a whole bunch of opportunities. Like Hope's Academy is one. That's new, and hopefully y'all do support Bill 12 in the long run. But I just want to know, how many chances do you give a person before you say 1, 2, 3, it's done, it's over? He needs help, because guess what? I had circumstances. I came from a broken home. I have 6 kids, 1 deceased now. I didn't go pick up a gun and say I'm going to shoot somebody, because my situation when I was growing up was hell. My son's situation was hell, because guess what? I was a single parent, but he didn't go out and kill nobody, but somebody wanted to kill him. So enough is enough. Stop making excuses for these kids that's going shooting other kids and killing them. They know what they're doing. It's not they don't know what they're doing. They know from right from wrong. If I go out and shoot somebody now, are you going to look at my circumstance and say, oh, somebody shot her son, so she wants to go back and retaliate? Fair is fair.
I think that the question was, how many chances does somebody get with a gun charge? Is there any process or protocol around that? Okay. So every one of these questions can't be answered here.
Thank you. I've been in Delaware for 40 years now. Came here from the New York City Police Department, was Criminal Justice Department chairman at Wilmington College. We don't have 2 things that every other police force has in the country. And not having these 2 things is causing problems. Civilian Complaint Review Board. You never heard about it. It's where people make a complaint, and it's not taken by some phone call answerer in a police station or even in the chief's office. You have 3 policemen and the number of people who have the complaint, who actually have, if you will, a mini-trial. We had a mayor named Dinkins, who was the first black mayor that we ever had in New York City.
Sir?
Yes.
Could you just ask your question, please?
Yeah, the question is, why don't we have a civilian complaint review board?
Okay.
And that means that people make a formal statement, and it's composed of 7 people, 3 cops.
Yeah, I think we all know what a civilian complaint review
No, I don't
board
think you do, sir. In fact,
But-
I know you don't.
Yeah.
All right? You
Chief-
just don't like the way I bring these things
No,
up.
Chief
I'm
Cummings,
sorry, it's
can you
important.
respond to what is the status of a civilian review here in Wilmington?
Yes, we don't have a civilian complaint review board because of Title 11, Chapter 9200. The Police Officers' Bill of Rights is why we don't have one.
Do you have a formal trial, so to speak?
We do have trial boards that are manned by our captains and our inspectors, yes. I will tell you that they know about it because a number of officers have sat in front of that board and have been disciplined.
Greetings. I have a simple question. We've been conducting a group of seminars on trauma. I spent 50 years as Chief Cummings knows me, as a counselor and then dealing with the Veterans Administration. Recently, we found that we were told that there was no counseling for post-traumatic stress disorder in this state for children, and that turned out to be a lie. We had the experts come down the other day, and there were none for Wilmington, but for the rest of the state, they have special trauma folks who do nothing but trauma. They keep an eye on all of them, they're specially trained, who can bring the violence out of these children. My question is now, because the churches, as a result of these seminars, have agreed to allow them in to even do this trauma work in the churches. Will the city support this work? Because we're going to be doing another seminar soon. And she said, just make a question. Let me tell you this. Once you have stress, this takes a second, in your life, it cuts off the brain so that the stress, the flight can take place. And then when it's over with, the brain comes back. But if it happens too often, it never allows the brain to take over. And
so, Councilwoman, can you respond to a proposal about the city support for treatment for post-traumatic stress?
Well, I can tell you that right now with the Child Advocacy Center, because I ended up using it firsthand. At first, my son didn't want to go, but I said, no, you're going to go, because I remember they made a presentation before council. And, the sad part is that more parents are not using the Child Advocacy Center when their child has either witnessed a crime, has been a victim of crime, or is in an environment where there is crime. This does affect children at a very young age. By the time that my son was done, he was fine. He was able to talk to the police officer. He was able to bring his friends in. And I think he weathered pretty well from this, although there's still some fear factors there. I believe that any program that churches, community leaders, and people put together to address this issue, a very real issue, because I don't believe that we have enough mental health counseling, even on a lower level, higher level, whatever the symptoms are. We need to have that, and we should definitely welcome it and support it as best we can. And I would be very happy to see more information on what the gentleman proposed and see how we as a city can help support things like that.
Thank you. Chandra, do you have someone else?
Hello. I've been trained in systems for families and congregations, and it does take a lot of training. My question is there trained system analysts whom the city and state are utilizing in addition to the forums that we already have? I mean, a behavior psychologist, sociologists that would look at the system as a whole and understand the purposeful nature of the behavior, what it's trying to sustain, and then, then we have a better idea of how to change it. Do we have anybody like that working with us?
We have a CDCP, Child Development Community Policing program that is run through the police department to deal with juveniles who have experienced some or witnessed some kind of traumatic incident. So we do have counselors and psychologists on hand that do deal with the families. From that perspective, I'm not sure.
Good morning, good afternoon, I guess now. I have a quick question, and I want to put something quickly in perspective. I lost my brother to violence in Reading, so I'm on both sides of the fence, so to speak. What are we doing, though, to keep kids from going into the justice system under a first offense? A lot of states are successful at having programs with community leaders. So what are we doing in Delaware and in Wilmington so that our kids don't end up in the justice system, sometimes for reasons that, even for a simple crime?
Any question, and just, we have the chief of police, we have somebody from the governor's commission, we have a city council person. These questions are not going to go unanswered if by chance we want to give you the right answer, and these forums are monthly, and we've brought mental health professionals, people from the nonprofit and social impact sector. So any response to that, or is that something?
Well, the person holding the mic that's speaking, the One Village Alliance, I think that Chandra Pitt should be commended for the efforts of what she is doing in her community with her organization. Girls Can Do Anything, the program with fathers and sons. So individually, there are organizations in our city, West End Neighborhood House, the Powell Center. There are churches, youth groups. We even have the Youth Commission, which actually comes to us and works as a regular commission to tell us, the adults, what needs to happen, what we should be doing better in government. So there are a lot of resources out there. I think sometimes what happens is that the resources are dissected. Everybody's in their own little world doing their programs. That it would be great to see an overall strategic plan on how we can fill in where the deficiencies are. I will be critical and tell you what we're not doing. I think that it is shameful that the City of Wilmington has a community center, the William Hicks Anderson Community Center, named after a great man, the father of our councilman, Nnamdi Chukwucha, and that we do not have enough going on in that center, and that in and around that center alone, what did the article just say, Chief? Was it 26 shootings that have happened in that neighborhood? That is not. It's unacceptable. Maybe we as a city should not be in the business of having a community center and see what organizations are out there, like maybe the Boys and Girls Club or Weston Neighborhood House, and see about letting someone who is good at it doing that, because that's a neighborhood that needs to have programs in a community center that works.
We have time for one more question, and then I need to wrap up and respect your time.
Well, good morning. My question has to do with community policing. I live in a neighborhood and been there for 30 years. It's gone downhill every year in the last 8 years. On Wednesday, just passed, my neighbors and myself were awakened to semi-automatic weapon fire that lasted at least 15 to 20 seconds with a retaliatory 5 single shots response. When you call 911, it takes so long for you to get through to make the report. By the time police arrive, there's nobody on the street except for neighbors coming out on their porches. This is at 27th and Tatnall, and it's an ongoing problem. And it has been an ongoing life-threatening problem because there have been 4 murders occurring on that corner or the vicinity. And I want to know what community policing strategies are going to be implemented to address the escalating crime issue and gunfire that have locked down and made the neighbors that are seniors and children hostages in their own homes, porches, or backyards because we don't see community policing. This is the 27th Street and 2600 block of Tatnall and the 27th Street between Tatnall and Moore.
Okay, we have time for a quick response.
Okay, thank you.
And I think this is really a question for you, Chief Cummings.
Yes. Okay, thank you for your question. Our transfers have just taken effect June 9th. So that's when all the community policing officers are being placed back into the neighborhoods. They're currently in the process with the captains and lieutenants of getting out to all of the civic association meetings and touching base with the residents who live within that area. If we are able to build the relationships back in the community and build the trust back, and that the community then steps up also and takes part into what's happening, we're going to better be able to decrease a lot of these incidents that are occurring. The ShotSpotter system gives us a good indication where things are occurring, and it allows us to collect evidence from shooting incidents that take place. I don't specifically have the information in which you talked about right now, but I will check and see if there was anything collected from that incident that we can tie to something else that may have occurred. But I know the officers would have responded to that, and then you trying to get through on the phone and not being able to get in. When those kind of incidents happen, we have phone calls that are pouring in from everybody in the area, along with the ShotSpotter alert. So I don't know if it was one of those situations where there were a number of calls being made and you couldn't get through, but our officers did respond to the area.
One final comment?
How's everybody doing today?
Would you stand, please?
Oh, sure. I thought I was tall enough in my seat. I just had a quick question just in regards to the report, in regards to first part of it, and I'm going to be very quick because I know we're short on time. The person that's coming in for a director of communications, is this going to replace the PIO officer that's currently involved? And then secondly, which alludes to the larger question of the fiscal perspective of it, is how do we work better to save a lot of the money that we have that our citizens, you know, the 36% of our budget, how do we work as a community, how does the police force work to really save on a financial perspective? And then third, I think we need to also address the larger issue of the community, right? So community policing ends up working hand in hand with a lot of the issues that we have in regards to the House Bill SB 12, in regards to some of the other issues in regards to crime. So how do we work, because we have to find a way for these young men to do certain things to get opportunities so that they're not necessarily in the same cycle. And
Okay,
going back to what you said.
That's a three-part.
Oh, sorry, it was a quick three-part question, I thought.
Yeah.
But that's the main thing, just the fiscal perspective and also from a holistic community service perspective.
Okay, real quick. The PIO position over time, we do look to have that filled by that civilian person we're looking to hire. In terms of fiscal responsibility, majority of the police budget goes to personnel costs. We have very little MS&E costs. The other piece that we can control will be the overtime expenditure. And by having that strategic planning inspector, they will oversee all overtime spending for the police department to make sure that we stay in line. In terms of the community policing effort, I'm just trying to get back to following where you were on that. But the community policing effort will be strong in terms of trying to deal with the individuals within the sector that they're responsible for policing to make better relationships with the youth, the residents who live in the area, and the business owners. And I don't know if I fully followed your community policing question. Okay.
Okay, yeah. I just want to wrap up by saying that on the table over here, there's some literature about some other issues. A number of us, and with the support of City Council and Mayor Williams, were in Dover this week to testify in favor of Senate Bill 83, which will strengthen domestic violence protection. So there's some information about that if you're interested. I'd also note that if you haven't picked up a Movement for a Culture of Peace card, this is our contact card. It gives you our web address. You can find us on Facebook. You can even get text messages from us. Chris, do you want to, you have some words? Okay. And thank you all for being here from my perspective. Chris has an announcement, and then Chandra will wrap it up.
Just a couple of quick logistical things. If you used one of the hand fans, please return it to the basket on the piano so that we'll have them for worship tomorrow morning. And if you have a mug, if you can return it to the tray on the snack table, and that way we'll be able to get those all together as well.
Thank you all. Thank you for your time this morning. Again, this is monthly. Please follow us on our Facebook page at Movement for a Culture of Peace. We have a website, the same name, Movement for a Culture of Peace. One final thank you. This is not the end. We appreciate all your voices, your time. I know we kept you for an extra 5 minutes in the heat. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend, and please let the dialogue continue. For those of you who didn't get your questions answered, we'll be here. Thank you to all of our panelists and to all of you.